Joining me now is Marty Baron. Newsrooms under his leadership have won 18 Pulitzer Prizes, including 11 with the Washington Post, for leading the coverage of some of the most important stories of our time, including the January 6th insurrection. His previous work at the Boston Globe covering the sex abuse scandal within the Catholic Church not only won awards, it was made into the Academy Award-winning film called Spotlight. Baron is the author of the book Collision of Power, Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post, a book that is very relevant to what we're talking about today. Marty, good to see you. Thank you for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Marty, you don't do a ton of press. You don't comment on everything that goes on out there. So when you speak, journalists pay attention because it means something. There are a good number of people out there who perhaps do not understand the relationship between the owner of a newspaper, the publisher, and the editorial board and the reporter. So give us a little bit of insight into that relationship and what it means for the owner and the publisher of the Post to have blocked an endorsement of Kamala Harris that was basically prepared.
Well, at a place like the Washington Post, there's a division between the opinions department and the news department. I was in charge of the news department. That's a pretty traditional setup at many American newspapers. So I wasn't involved in the opinions. But my concern here is that are the circumstances of this decision to not publish an endorsement. Every newspaper can decide whether it wants to issue political endorsements or not. If this decision had been made 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, fine. They can decide whether they want to issue endorsements for president or any other political office. But this was a decision that was announced 11 days before the election. It was not a decision made in consultation with the editorial board. It was a decision that, according to the Post itself, its own reporting, that was made by Jeff Bezos, and the circumstances are just highly suspect. So that's my concern here, and that's why I'm speaking out. Normally, if I were at the newspaper, I wouldn't be involved in these decisions, of course, but I felt it was important to speak out in this instance.
So I want to try and examine what, without you knowing or me knowing what the reasons are. There are a couple of ideas out there. Timothy Snyder talks about this concept of obeying in advance, right? Worrying about what Trump may do when he becomes president and doing the things that protect your interests. On the other hand, there is a potential business issue here that may be that Jeff Bezos and the publisher of the LA Times, or the owner of the LA Times, are preserving potential business interests. Do the distinctions matter as to which one it is? Because obey in advance feels really bad in a democracy. Media owners having business interests, we're a little more familiar with.
Sure. Well, I don't know exactly what the circumstances were here, but as I said, the circumstances are highly suspect. This was not a decision that was made a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or anything like that. The fact is that Jeff Bezos does have business interests. Of course, Amazon and then Blue Origin, his space company, they have contracts with the government. I was proud that during my time at the Post and during Jeff Bezos' ownership, during that entire period, he resisted pressure from Donald Trump. Trump tried to undermine the Amazon's business. He said he was going to do that. He threatened to increase postal rates, double them, triple them, quadruple them. He did intervene in a $10 billion Defense Department cloud computing contract to ensure that it did not go to Amazon. Bezos stood up to that. He let us do our work with full independence. He let the opinions department do their work as well. They actually wrote 2 editorials against Trump's campaign for the presidency, first in 2016 and then in 2020, when a question was raised as to whether they would actually write an editorial in 2016. Bezos said, well, why would we not issue an editorial endorsement? And they went ahead and did so. So I see this as a betrayal of the core principles of the Post, and also a betrayal of the practices and the principles that Bezos himself professed during my time at the Washington Post. I wrote about that in the book, how he stood up for us. I was very proud of that. I was very grateful for that. But this is something different.
A lot of strong reactions to this, including by people who are canceling their subscriptions to the Post and the LA Times. It's a double-edged sword here. As another Washington Post journalist, Carol Leonnig, points out, she's asked people not to cancel their subscriptions because, as she says, quote, it will only hurt the independent news gathering that my colleagues and I strive to do for you every day, end quote. This is a tricky one, right? People have limited means in which to express their dissatisfaction with media organizations, and one of them is canceling their subscription.
Well, I still have my subscription, and I would encourage people to keep their subscriptions. I mean, the fact is that their subscriptions provide the resources to do the kind of investigative work that Carol Leonnig and many of her colleagues, her terrific colleagues, are doing every single day. A lot of what people know about Donald Trump and also what they know about Kamala Harris comes from the work of the newsroom of the Washington Post and other major institutions like the New York Times. They need the resources to do that work. They continue to do outstanding investigative journalism. They very much believe in their mission of holding the powerful accountable. That includes politicians, and it certainly includes the President of the United States or people who aspire to be President of the United States, which is the most powerful position in the world. So I want to support that kind of work. And so I maintain my subscription. I understand that people are deeply upset and want to register their concern. But I think people should try to imagine the world without a Washington Post, without the kind of work that they're doing every day. And we would be weaker as a democracy. The Post makes contributions with its journalism every single day to this democracy. And I hope that we still have the Post around to do that kind of work.
Marty, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. It's a special occasion, as I said, because you don't go out there a ton to opine on things. So it's nice to have you here. Marty Baron is a former executive editor of the Washington Post. He's the author of the important book, Collision of Power: Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post.